We're back with another episode of Mac Stories Unwind. Today's episode is brought to you by Concepts, who's also the sponsor of our entire OS Summer Preview Series. So Federico Vitici is with me, and I want to say hello to you, Federico. It's pretty late on a Friday for us in terms of our recording.
Well, hello. Yes, this is a Friday night special, as they call it. It's 11:30 p.m. for me, so this is going to be a fun one.
Yes, it's. I was just saying to Federico before we got started, if only we had nothing but work to do, if only. But we both had a lot going on today, and schedules pushed us into the evening. But in any event, I thought, Federico, today that we should do something a little different, since this is a different kind of approaching midnight episode for you. That
the midnight
special. We got the Midnight Express here. We need to do something a little different and mix it up. And so instead of talking about media and media picks, I thought we'd talk a little bit about the hardware on which we watch that media. And, we could go deep on things like audio and things, which we've done in the past. But I thought today we would stick primarily to, TV, movies, and maybe video games. We'll see if we have time to get to that. But primarily TV and movies, to talk a little bit about how we consume the content or the media that we enjoy. What are we doing in terms of TVs or other screens on which we're watching that, and why do we kind of make the choices that we do? And I think probably you and I approach this, in a pretty similar way. I know I will, spoiler alert, Federico and I just made television purchases, both of us almost at the same time within a couple of weeks of each other. And they were both very similar purchases. And before we get to that, though, I want to get your thoughts, Federico, on how you approach the kind of hardware you look at when you're shopping for something, that's going to be a general purpose screen like a TV. That's going to be for watching TV at night, and movies that you rent. And, you're going to maybe connect your PS5 to it, and maybe your gaming PC. How do you approach that? Because I think I've got a sense for it, but why don't you share it with our listeners too?
Yeah. So there's a few things at play here. So we were in the market for a new TV. Sylvia and I were shopping for a new TV. So one of the things I consider to be utterly essential for me is OLED. I firmly believe that once you go OLED, there's no going back. We have a non-OLED, smaller TV in the kitchen, and every time I look at it, I'm just sad. We do have two Apple TVs, one in the bedroom, one in the kitchen, and sometimes we want to keep watching a Netflix show or like an Apple TV show because we don't have Netflix anymore at the moment. But sometimes you want to continue as we're having dinner or as we're having lunch or something. And the difference in image quality between the Samsung TVs, like a standard LCD 4K TV that we have in the kitchen and the one we have in the bedroom, is just wild. So I knew going into this process again, it's been almost, I think it's been 5 years since I last bought a TV, but I knew it's gotta be OLED. Even with all the issues and all the asterisks that buying an OLED TV involved, meaning that like you gotta be careful with burn-in, for example. And there's sometimes there's issues right out of the manufacturers. Like when you take the TV out of the box, maybe you may have a few dead pixels in there. And that's like common stuff that happens with OLED purchases. But still, the image quality and the black levels and the vibrant colors, OLED is for sure the defining factor. And then I think for me personally, I had a few other important but not as essential. Well, maybe one was also essential, which is I knew I needed to have an HDMI 2.1 TV with support for 120 hertz refresh rate with the PS5. I knew that I was going to set up the PS5 finally in the living room, and I wanted to make sure that I would have the best absolute experience at 4K at 120 hertz, and that's possible with HDMI 2.1. And then after that, there were a couple of other things, like ideally because I've had such a good experience with the LG TV. We have an LG B7 from 2017. Ideally, I wanted to get another LG. And then I thought it would be nice to have maybe HomeKit support. And it would be nice to have native AirPlay support. We do have AirPlay, but not HomeKit in the kitchen TV. And it's very nice to be able to AirPlay stuff directly to the TV. So ideally, I wanted to have those features as well. And, just as many HDMI ports as possible. And we were looking for 55 inches or 65 inches, but no bigger than that for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's very similar to the process I went through. But to give you some background on where I was coming from, my last TV purchase, at least for our main television in our living room, was in 2011.
Wow.
So it was more than a decade ago, all right? And so it was a nice Sony Bravia 46-inch 1080p TV, but it was really showing its age. I mean, it was hung on the wall, which I would never do again, because that just adds a bit of friction to replacing it, because, taking that thing off the wall and replacing it, you either have to have people come in and mount it for you, or you have to patch up the wall and put it on a stand or something like that. And so I would never do that again. And because we just moved, though, it was the perfect time to start shopping for a new TV. We gave away the one that we had in Illinois. And about a week after we got down here, I started shopping. And for me, the considerations were very similar. I wanted to have the same kind of refresh rate for video games. I wanted to have OLED. I'd never had OLED before, but I had, earlier in the year purchased that 13.6 inch C-Force OLED display that I've been using, that portable display. And boy, did that spoil me. I mean, I wanted that on as big a screen as humanly possible. And we ended up getting an OLED TV. I also have, I've heard a lot of good things about LG in the past, though never owned an LG TV. But knowing that you were happy with yours, I know some of our friends have them as well, and I've read a lot of the reviews. I figured that's the way I would go, because they've got a good track record. But yeah, that's what I was looking for. And so about a week ago, I got the C2, which is the OLED, and I got a 55-inch TV. 55 is about the biggest size that would comfortably fit in the apartment we're in. And I think the only one, if I went any larger, Jennifer would probably kill me. But it looks fantastic. And one of the reasons I went with the very latest model, because there are like last year's models you can get a much better deal on, which I know you're aware of. But the C2 I went with because for the very reason that it's been 11 years since I bought a TV, and it may be another 10 before I buy another one. I don't buy them very often, and so I wanted it to be kind of as current and as up to date as it could possibly be. The difference between the C2 and the C1 is pretty minimal, though. I mean, I think the C2 is supposedly a little brighter and has a couple other bells and whistles, maybe, but not many differences at all.
Yeah, and I got a C1.
Exactly. It was a couple of days ago, right?
Yeah. So a couple of days ago, we found. So just some necessary context here. I don't know when or how or why this started, but apparently it's a thing now. My theory is that. Well, let me explain first. It appears that a bunch of Italian retailers, and specifically electronic retailers, have sort of all agreed upon doing this thing called, and please do not think that all Italians are like this, John.
Okay.
But it's this event that they call Summer Black Friday.
Okay. They're trying to get out ahead of the Amazon Prime Day, aren't they?
Yeah. Exactly. That's my theory. I think they all realized, oh no, everybody's just shopping on Amazon in the summer. We got to do something. And so there's all these Italian retailers. There's one called Uniaero. There's another called Media World. But all these folks are now doing the Summer Black Friday just ahead. In fact, it's so ridiculous because Prime Day is on the 12th and 13th, but this Summer Black Friday festivities, they end on the 10th. So just like 48 hours before. But anyway, I can take advantage of a good deal if I see one.
Sure.
I don't care about the history or the politics or how ridiculous a summer Black Friday sounds. There was the C1, the 55-inch model at 50% off.
That's amazing.
That we saved €1,000 in getting the C1 at that price. And sure, it's not the 2022 model, it's the 2021 model, but it's got everything I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's OLED, 55 inches, HDMI 2.1, and 120 hertz.
Yep. And that TV, you're lucky that you got it, really, because they're starting to be in short supply because, I think the C2s came out around March or April. And so there are fewer of the C1s on shelves worldwide. I know they're harder to come by in the US, although one of my sons just picked one up about 2 months ago, I think. So he's got the same one you do, I think. I think it's 55-inch too. But yeah, I've been loving it. I mean, for me, it's like a huge leap forward, right? Because I went from 1080p with a handful of inputs to OLED 55-inch, and our old TV was 46 inches. So this is a pretty big step up in size as well. But now that the TVs have such thin bezels, it's not as big as the Sony one was. It's bigger than the Sony one was, but it's not as big as you might think because it has shrunken bezels, and they're relatively light now. I think that's one thing that's different between the C1 you bought and what I got, is that with the C2, they started using this carbon fiber casing for the TV that shaves off a bunch of pounds. I think my TV is only like 22 pounds, which is pretty lightweight for a 55-inch TV. So yeah, that's the TV that we will watch movies on. That's the TV that we'll watch TV shows on, that we'll use the Xbox and the PS5 on. So it's really the general purpose TV for the whole family. I'll still use the C-Force for playing games when someone else is using the TV. And I've got other screens in my life, but that's the main one in our living room that we'll use the most. We don't have a TV in our bedroom right now. We thought about putting one in there. We do have a couple of older 1080p screens still, but one of them's in my son's room. And I think the other one we're going to give to my nephew who's moving into an apartment, because we don't really watch much TV in bed. We usually just watch on the couch and then read in bed or something like that. This episode of Mac Stories Unwind and our entire OS Summer Preview series is brought to you by Concepts. Sketch, explore, and share endless ideas with Concepts' Infinite Canvas for iPad. Designed for creators of all types, the app is ideal for visual thinking, note-taking, drawing, and professional design. Concept lets you interact with and edit your sketches, helping you think and draw smarter. As everything you draw in the app is a vector, you can move, edit, and organize your sketches after you draw them using natural gestures. Sketch freely with liquid pens, markers, and brushes in designer Copic colors. Create mood boards with images, PDFs, and objects, then draw on top. Design with tools like grids, snap, and real-world measurements to create professional projects. Connect your device to any display for instant whiteboarding with a built-in presentation mode. Concepts is used by designers and illustrators at Apple, Disney, PlayStation, Unity, and other companies globally to sketch, design, and communicate visually. Concept comes free as a basic sketching app with the ability to unlock features with a subscription or one-time purchase. You can learn more today about this terrific app by going to their website, which is concepts.app. Mac Stories readers and listeners of this show can enjoy a special 3-month extended free trial when they sign up for an annual subscription by going to concepts.app/MacStories. Again, that URL to get 3 months of infinite creativity before your build is concepts.app/MacStories. Our thanks to Concepts for their support of the show.
Are you a soundbar person?
I might be someday. Right now, I am not.
Interesting.
Right now, I am not. I, at one point, had the surround sound in my old house, right? And that was speakers in the walls and things like that. And I feel like technology's allowed us to make, and this was going to go into the point that I was going to make a little bit too, which is technology has advanced to the point where you don't really, you can do that and it's very fancy and it sounds very good. But on the other hand, sound bars are good enough now and they're convenient and easy enough that it's a good solution. I think it's a better solution for most people. I'm using my HomePods, my original HomePods, paired right now with the TV, and they sound amazing with it. And I hope Apple does something at some point that I might replace those with, or I might use a sound bar. But right now, the HomePods are perfect for that because they work with eARC. And so now I set everything up so that the HomePods now are driving with the Apple TV 4K. They're driving the sound for the TV and the game consoles. So everything runs through there at the same time, and it sounds amazing.
Okay. Yeah. I've been thinking about soundbars again, but it's just, I don't know. I feel like if Apple comes out with a new HomePod, like
Yeah, see, that's
for
the
real,
thing. Yeah.
like I at this point I kind of want to wait. I sold all my
know you
HomePods. I
did.
think I sold all of them, and they go super easy online.
know.
Like I was able to sell like 5 of them.
I drove through
Like,
a snowstorm for you, Federico, and you sold the HomePod.
I know, but the memories will never
That's
die.
true. That's true.
We'll always have our memories
That's true.
of the snowstorm. Like that's never going away.
That's true.
But the HomePod had to go away, John.
All right. No, I get it, but it does make a good sound bar. I mean, it's not a sound bar, but it does work well with the TV. If I were in your position, I'd probably wait too, or I'd go with Sonos. I forget the name of it. One of the Sonos sound bars, not the super super high end one or the super low end one that they just came out with, but kind of maybe the medium to high one that came out. I forget what it's called. But that's the one that I had my eye on. But I have these HomePods, and I actually don't really have a good place for them in my life other than in the living room. So it kind of works perfectly for that. And one reason I went with what is a fairly high-end TV is because I don't have a ton of time to devote to TV and video games. And as a result, I want it to be as nice an experience as it can possibly be when I do that, which is one of the other points I just wanted to make, because it's like, there's this balancing always between that sort of consideration and convenience, which is kind of where I'm coming from with the HomePods. It's also why I don't do Blu-rays either. I've never really owned a Blu-ray. I think we actually do own one that my son bought, but I don't, because I don't really like physical media anymore. I download or stream pretty much everything. And I know that the best video quality I could possibly get is if I get a Blu-ray of some movie, as opposed to, a lot of the streamers will crunch that video down. Like Netflix is pretty notorious about that, even with their their Ultra HD stream. But in some areas, convenience really tops quality, and that's kind of where I draw the line. I'm not really into collecting physical media.
Yeah, I think I have 2 Blu-rays that I bought, if only because I wanted to have them as physical objects, and because there was no good way to purchase them digitally, and I still need to watch them. They're still in a box. I think I will do that actually at some point this summer. One of them is the 4K remaster that I think I got last year of Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. This is a CGI movie that they did 10 years ago or something. No, actually, I'm old. Was it like 15 or 20?
20 years ago.
Oh, geez. I don't know. But they did this movie. So my plan is to try and play the original Final Fantasy VII before the part 2 of the remake. What's it called? Reborn? What did they say it was called? Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2.
I forget. I'm not as big a
Resurrection?
Something. I'm not as big a fan of it as you are.
Rebirth. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not Reborn. Rebirth. But that comes out next year, right? So I figured before Rebirth comes out next year, because they said 2023, ideally, I would like to play the original Final Fantasy VII, which I never finished as a kid. I believe I got to disc 3 back in the day. Those PlayStation games, they used to come, and especially the Final Fantasy games were huge games, and they needed to be split on multiple discs. And I believe I got to disc 3 out of 4 of Final Fantasy VII, and I stopped. And I was very young. So I would like to play the original again. And I think I'm going to do that on the Aya Neo with an emulator and upscale mode, maybe. Then I would like to play the Crisis Core remaster that's coming out this holiday season. and watch the movie. So before, like, basically be ready with like dusting off all my old Final Fantasy VII knowledge before Rebirth in 2023. Anyway, one of the Blu-rays is Advent Children, and the other is the 4K remaster of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Oh, okay.
That came out also last year, I think, and I got it from Amazon US because it was not available here. And that remaster is really wild. Like, Peter Jackson has been doing some incredible things to restore the original movies and upgrade them to 4K with new lighting, new textures, new scenes. Like, it's incredible. So that I want to, but that's the kind of project where I need to set aside multiple days to watch them all.
Yeah, you need like a long holiday weekend or something where you're just going to stay at home and not do much. But
like Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas is a good time for that kind of thing. That sounds really, that's actually one that I might actually check out. And I've got the PS5 to play it on. So definitely possible. All right, before we close out, Federico, I want to ask you about the other screens in your life. I've already mentioned the C-Force, which is a portable OLED display that's 13.6 inches that I've mentioned on the show before, that I use with my Xbox and PlayStation 5 and occasionally with my iPad as a second screen. But what other screens are in your life? I am not a person who watches a lot of video on my iPad, surprisingly enough. Is the iPad or your Mac or the C-Force, what else is it that you're using these days?
The C-Force I primarily use as either a secondary display for the iPad Pro or MacBook Pro, or a gaming display. So either for the Nintendo Switch or my gaming PC. That's what I use it for the most. So watching TV and movies, I prefer. So here's the thing: if I don't bother Sylvia at night, I prefer watching on the TV.
Right.
Obviously, if maybe the thing I gotta watch has a lot of bright scenes with flashing lights, like if I'm expecting that kind of content, I use the iPad Pro just because it's easier to hold it in my hands and it doesn't weigh as much as a MacBook Pro.
You kind of angle it away so it's not in her face.
And you can angle it. You could I can choose to use the Magic Keyboard or just hold it in my hands or put it on my lap or something. So yeah, if I think I'm gonna bother Sylvia too much, I'm gonna use the iPad Pro. Otherwise, I just put on my AirPods and I watch via the Apple TV on the television.
All right, and I guess for the PS5, you're primarily using either your television or.
Oh yeah. I tried Remote Play, and I know that you use it a bunch with the Backbone controller, like you do a lot of Remote Play with the PlayStation app. But I just prefer to play on the big screen.
Yeah.
And the PS5 for me has always been the type of experience where, okay, I'm sitting down for a couple of hours and I'm playing a PlayStation game. Like, it's a very intentional thing to do.
Right.
As opposed to like a Nintendo Switch or a Steam Deck or an A&E, or like, okay, I'm grabbing this for 30 minutes and then I'm done. The PC, it's same problem, and the PS5 are very intentional experiences where I'm like, okay, it's 1 a.m. I guess I'm playing until 3 a.m. some Elden Ring or some Horizon or whatever. It's a very different experience, and I prefer doing that on a big screen.
Well, I'm going to be interested to see how that changes for me with the new TV, because part of the reason I think handheld appealed to me so much was that the iPhone screen is so good compared to the 1080p TV that I had to play on that was smaller, and we sat a lot further back from it. So things like reading the text was really hard, and the picture wasn't that great anyway. So yeah, I may now with an OLED screen actually be migrating more to the big screen, although I haven't played a whole lot since we've been busy with our move and everything. So, but I hope to in the next couple of weeks. All right, Federico. Well, that was a good discussion. I think we should we'll tackle video game hardware maybe another time, because I think between the two of us, we have way too many different consoles and handhelds and things like that to really throw into one episode along with TVs. But thanks again to our sponsor for this episode, Concepts. You can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. Federico is at Viticci on Twitter and Instagram. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees, JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.